Greetings everyone, peace to you all. Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they are excellent and commendable. Today we will be reviewing SANABI, a 2D action speed platformer by Korean indie developer Wonder Potion. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. So without further ado, let's jump in. Players play as the legendary General, a retired soldier with a prosthetic chain arm who is reluctantly pulled in for one last mission to discover the mystery of the in-game entity SANABI in a Korean cyberpunk city. As a video game experience, SANABI is a no-frills experience. It focuses only on its core gameplay and its narrative, which is not necessarily a bad thing. There are no underdeveloped RPG subsystems, no random minigames, no QTEs, no games within a game. Okay, I think there was maybe one random minigame. But mostly, SANABI concentrates on a compelling narrative and its main gameplay mechanics. The core gameplay has 3 major components: platforming, puzzles, and combat. Platforming is by far the most important aspect of the entire game. Platforming essentially consists of using what the game calls a chain arm, which is basically a grappling hook to grab certain surfaces and to swing onto other surfaces as a sort of 2D Spider-Man. A lot of gameplay is simply swinging through the game and getting from platform to platform. Platforming feels good in the same way that web swimming feels good in the Insomniac Spider-Man games. What you want to do and what the game allows you to do feel in tandem. The game's aiming assist for this is sufficiently helpful that while this is easier with a mouse, playing with a controller is quite doable. Additional abilities like being able to cling to walls, generate a burst of momentum mid-swing, dashing when taking damage, and changing the length of the chain arm are all tools the game gives players to enhance their traversal and to overcome obstacles. The platforming is designed in such a way that you should be able to do it at high speeds, similar to NES Super Mario games running at full speed. In fact, the game is built for speedrunning, and there seems to be a solid speedrunning community for this game, but I'm not a big speedrunner, so I don't know a whole lot about that. The speedrunning can be slowed down by what I will call puzzles. Yes, technically some of the platforming are also puzzles, but I call this a sort of different mechanic because at certain points in the game, the way forward does become obscure enough that you do need to actually think about the correct sequence, particularly in later stages of the game. Puzzles are not particularly challenging and are a welcome change of pace from all the platforming. I actually feel that there were not enough of these puzzles, but I think I am probably in the minority here. The combat is not particularly challenging, but fits perfectly within the story. The PC essentially instantly defeats all enemies immediately if you can just target them with the chain arm and draw close for a kill shot. So combat is not really so much about complicated combat maneuvers or special attacks or timing, so much as just understanding, well, how to traverse around to eliminate enemies quickly. Again, this fits in with the overall style and pacing of the game. The only real exceptions to this are boss fights, which are quite interesting and different from each other. If I had any complaint, I would say that there weren't enough of them, but I won't spoil any of them here. Overall, I'm going to give SANABI 3 stars for fun factor. It does what it wants to do very well. It doesn't break new ground or do anything exhilarating, but it also didn't bore me. Honestly, there's not a lot to say about educational value here. It is not hard science fiction. You won't learn about DNA or dinosaur eras or anything like that. The game does little to teach you anything factual about our world in terms of the content or topics in the game, like warfare, AI, corporations, politics, hacking, drones, or real-life prosthetics. The one highlight for educational value is that while the game itself is not difficult, it does provide challenges in the form of speedrunning, with the game specifically being designed for that. So even though I myself am not a speedrunner, I do acknowledge that the game can provide some value in training for speedrunning. Therefore, I'm going to give SANABI 2 stars for educational value, mainly for its speedrunning value. SANABI's pixel art is both retro and very stylish. Some aspects of the art, like the in-game sprites for the characters, are not particularly impressive. They are more beautiful than, say, classic JRPG sprites, but overall the character art is very simple and not of particular note. What is of note, however, are the highly detailed pixel art backgrounds that really make the Mego City pop. These cyberpunk backgrounds are gorgeous and really highlight the personality of each section of the dystopian city. Pixel art animations, such as when the PC resets its chain arm, are very original and really bring to life the otherwise rather normal sprites. There is no voice acting, which is disappointing, but not surprising for an indie production like SANABI. The game, however, does do the best it can with its dialogue, opting for stylized speech bubbles that can include bolding, coloring, emojis, different size font, and even a little animation to represent different emotions. While the lack of voice acting may disappoint, SANABI's soundtrack does not. Like its pixel graphics, the game's electronic beats are reminiscent of a past era with a more modern polish. Most of the songs are energetic with high BPM and the clear beats of techno that really align with the speedrunning rhythm of the game. The narrative of SANABI is probably the #1 or #2 selling point of the game, depending on what type of gamer you are. Since I am not big on platforming or speedrunning, the narrative was definitely the attraction for me. The narrative has lots of twists and turns that could easily be spoiled, so I won't go into any details here. As mentioned before, the player plays as a legendary retired general who reluctantly takes on one last mission. The mission, unsurprisingly, turns out to be more complicated than he thought, and the mystery of SANABI threatens to destabilize not only Mako City, but the general's world as he knows it. According to VG Insights, at time of recording, SANABI has sold approximately 730,000 copies in less than 1 year. While this does not make Wonder Potion a cultural giant, it certainly is a very respectable debut as an indie developer. Overall, I'm going to rate SANABI 4 stars for its cultural value. There's not a lot of negative content in the game. There's little in the way of sexual content or substance abuse, other than the suggestion of some poor lifestyle choices by a character going through a tough time. Because of the art style, the violence of the game is not too explicit and is generally reasonable. However, for narrative reasons, there are a small number of scenes both at the beginning of the game and near the end of the game which are darker and gruesome in nature. I think the scenes make a lot of sense both in the narrative context and in the way the game attempts to portray violence and revenge, so it's not unnecessary per se, but it is there and it is something to watch out for. There's a lot of positive content in terms of the PC's interactions with his daughter. There's a lot of wholesome quality time of a dad playing with his daughter that is quite moving. As far as the themes and message of the game has a generally positive and moral message that I think Christians can generally get behind. For more thoughts on the themes of the game, check out my biblical themes video on SANABI. Overall, I think given the relatively clean nature and positive message of SANABI, I'm going to give it 4 stars for spiritual value. The game is quite short with little side content. For the time rich, replayability will mainly come in the form of speedrun attempts. If that isn't something you are interested in, then there is little additional content to do when the main story is completed. For the time poor, the narrative is quite accessible and can be completed in approximately 8 to 10 hours. SANABI retails for $14.99 USD and can be regularly found for approximately 20 to 25% off, which I personally find a little bit high for the length. I am not against short games. I think its length was perfect, but I think the price it is asking is just a little bit high. Overall, based on the content value, narrative accessibility, and asking price, I'm going to give SANABI 4 stars. SANABI is a very unique experience that is a refreshing change from the standard AAA fare. While unoriginal in some ways, it excels at what it focuses on, namely the platforming and immersive narrative experience. I definitely enjoyed my time with SANABI and felt my experience had a satisfying conclusion. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assigned SANABI the rating of Genre Gem. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.